Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I want to talk a little bit about the session of Lamentations of the Flame Princess I played with my face-to-face Lamentations in London group today. It's the second session I've had with that group. And it's a group of two players. And these two players are friends in real life. They're actually like cousins in real life, I believe. And so they're playing two characters who are friends in pretend life. They're both wizards. They both work for the same antiquarian bookseller, dealer in all kinds of esoteric antiquities. And so the first session was really cool. I let them kind of steer, the game in terms of I let them kind of develop, who they know, who they work for, who their initial, contacts are, what their usual days are like. Let them follow up some things that they wanted to do. And I had some, it's a typical campaign start where you've got a few things that are going on that are a little bit odd, and let the players kind of figure out where they want to go, which stuff they want to follow up on. So I let them kind of steer the game quite a bit. And second session went a little bit slower. I believe part of it was that there was some disagreement. There were some times where the players were kind of deliberating what to do, and it's interesting. There's two players, so sometimes I always wish sometimes there would be a third player because just like the rock band Rush, they always had three, and there was never a tie. I think I was actually having a discussion with Jason. I think it was Jason talking about group size. Do you want four? Do you want three players? And I think it was Jason equipped. Yeah, I'd like three because then there's never a tie. So there's nothing wrong with them having some disagreements and everything, and kind of deliberating what do we do here. Some of it's I'd like to promote more in character. That's just my flavor, and it's so a lot of times I would ask them where are you guys when you're having this discussion? Sometimes it was out of character, and I'd much rather for my druthers have them role play through these discussions because I think it's much more entertaining. Little side tangent. It was funny because one of the guys, was more about, what should they do, in terms of their machinations and setting themselves up for all these grand schemes they have. And the other player, while he agreed with some of that stuff, also said, well, a lot of times, well, the right thing to do here would be this, or I think this guy is much more noble than this other guy. And it was funny because, all of a sudden I realized I had this assassin and paladin, and that, is the group, to use a little D&Dism, but that's the easiest way to kind of understand the dynamic between these two characters. Pretty funny, actually. But I'd like to see a little bit more of that, in character. And so that's something, hopefully we can talk about a little bit more. And I think on my part, too, I think I maybe need to pace the game a little bit more. But anyhow, and that's a whole different discussion. But I realize in that, I think there's this part we need to discuss. The game's not going badly, but I can see there's some tweaks that I would like to make to kind of maybe make things run a little smoother and what have you. But I think we're all just kind of feeling each other out, feeling out the campaign, what do we really want to make this game about, all that sort of thing. A few interesting things happen in this game. I'm not going to give you a complete recap or anything of what happened. But one of the things, as they're determining what they're going to do next, they're going to follow up on some things that look kind of weird and whatnot. They actually go down to the docks at one point. They go... because they've heard from Boyd, not sure where I got that name, the guy that runs the bar, and he said there's some weird stuff going on at the docks, and down at the docks they don't see too much. They can't really figure out what's really going on there, but there's this bar, there's something Rusty Limpet or whatever, or Scurvy Limpet, and they see a bunch of seamen. These guys know nothing. I mean, they've never been. I've asked them have you guys ever been down the docks? You know anything about mariners? Nah, they're bookworms, and so I'm not really sure what to look. What looks spooky? I'm not sure what looks spooky here. But they meet this guy, Bosun Rimmer. I'm not sure where I got Rimmer's name either. But, a friendly, affable guy. But they talk to him a little bit, and they're acting kind of dodgy, to be quite honest. They're acting like guys that are just kind of a little scared of where they are and suspicious. So I figured, Rimmer's a character that I've had, some work on. He is somebody of import in my campaign, or could be. He's just somebody that I spent some more time actually fleshing out. And so he sends something after them to trail them to see what's going on with these guys. Because maybe they're part of the Inquisition. For somebody like Rimmer, the Inquisition is bad news. So this thing trails them. And I figure, well, I'm going to give them a chance to notice they're being trailed. So I have them roll D6. And if you roll a 1, you notice. That was my... I didn't tell them what they were going to notice. Or that they were going to notice anything. I just said, roll D6. One of them rolls a 1. They hear this little skittering sound. So they turn around. They're very paranoid. They're lighting the torch or lantern or whatever they have on them. And they one pulls out the flintlock pistol. And they can't see anything. Because this little thing is very good at hiding and getting away. It's just, it's very unlikely to make any kind of noise and be detected. So they finally figure out, okay, they were being paranoid. They're not sure what was going on. They get back to their place where they live, which is right above the shop. And so here's where things start to get really interesting. I think I rolled again at one point, and they hear some kind of skittering or whatnot. It might be why they're actually doing this stuff that they're doing. What are they doing? One of the players, has the spell Major Creation. And, we're using the VAM alternate rules I got for Free RPG Day for Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And so pretty much the deal is, even though you're first level spellcaster, you roll randomly on the entire spell list. You can get any of these spells regardless of level, because there aren't really spell levels anymore. So this guy's got Major Creation. Pretty powerful spell. Now in this particular game, there's no caveats, there's no provisos. You can make inorganic matter, metal. You can make metal, as long as you have a piece of it. Which means this player decides, hey, I can make money. I can take a silver piece, and it says I can make up to a cubic foot of this stuff per my caster level. I can make a cubic foot of silver. I'm going to make a cubic foot of silver. I can make a cube. I think I've won D&D, And so anyhow, he does this, and I didn't even look on I'm not going to look on the internet and see like what people have done with this. I decided to make a ruling. Okay, you can do this, but that will have consequences. Everything has consequences. Whatever you do in role-playing games. And he says specifically wants a cube. I do look up on my phone because now we're connected to the internet, and I can find up facts. That's 655 pounds, something like that. Big, giant, heavy block just materializes on this wood floor back in 1620. I rolled dice. It does not break the floor. It almost broke right through the floor and crashed down to the next room. But it certainly cracked a bunch of floorboards significantly. So that was very comical at that point. However, here's what's going on. Rimmer has sent this little thing to go trail these guys. And this little thing, is trying to see what's up with them. So it's peering through their windows. That's what it would do. When it sees this, I have this little thing. Actually, I believe I actually heard they rolled one more time and actually heard some scratching outside the window at some point. Once again, they looked around, couldn't see anything. When this thing sees them make money, a big giant block of silver, it lets out this little cry. I just figured, there's no chance for them not to hear this thing. It's going to be very surprised. They turn around, they see this little hideous face right in the window. It probably looks like one of these little chibi, guys, Avenger guys, except this little horrific little face. And I say it kind of darts back out. Reginald says, I'm going to shoot at it. And so I decided I'm going to be really charitable, let him get a shot with a flintlock pistol in half a second. I give him a -4 chance. I think I told him after he rolled, because he rolled really well. I should have told him before. So, lesson learned. But, he was fine with me narrating the fact that he missed, but he shot out the window. He just shot a firearm in the house in the middle of the night. Everybody wakes up. They're all, coming upstairs. What's going on? He's saying, I saw brigands. And, I decide I'm going to roll dice. I give this, very high chance that they're going to notice this big block of silver. The one guy they work for is actually Trump's upstairs. He doesn't. He actually doesn't notice it, so I just, narrate that he's so focused on the window. So they just, they didn't do anything to hide it. They've got this big giant block of silver in their room. Instantly, we're going to get to the treasure of the Sierra Madre, where everybody's eyes roll in the back of their head. So he goes down, but, They go out at this point. They want to find a silversmith. They want to see if they can, get this block out of here. You have some guy convert this into usable stuff. Split it 50-50. There's going to be consequences. Because now all of a sudden they take it to the silversmith. They tell the silversmith. They all see this. Their eyes are popping out of their head. Everybody gets the gold fever all of a sudden. So this guy is now all of a sudden doing the Humphrey Bogart thing and getting all freaky on him. Not sure where that's going to go, but everything has consequences. So I guess it's not necessarily overpowered. If you make money, there's still going to be consequences. Ruin the economy, or everybody else figures out, geez, So, anyhow, without going down that rabbit hole of fun. The other consequence is this little creature that got sent by Rimmer to go see if these guys were part of the Inquisition or something else he should be concerned about, has noticed that they can actually cast magic and they're able to actually make stuff appear out of thin air. So, of course it's going to go talk to Rimmer. What would you do at that point? We never had this discussion of where's your spell book. Okay, so I made the assumption that they're not carrying it on them. We had a discussion afterwards, and the player was kind of like, I'm cool with what happened because it's interesting. From now on, I'm going to narrate that this thing is on my person. Because what happened? They went out, they did all these other things, they didn't do anything to secure anything. They already see this little creature that's seen them do this thing. It steals his spell book. Doesn't realize the other guy's a magic user. He only steals one spell book. Steals a spell book. Player is freaked out at this point. And, could have gone either way. If he got really upset and said, hey, that's not cool, then I would have certainly retconned it, and we've had a discussion about that. Future reference, another lesson learned. I need to have these discussions with the players way in the beginning of the game. Where's your spell book? Have a discussion about all that kind of stuff. But the players are reasonable, and he even said, I'm mad about this, but because this is interesting, I'm going to go with this. And it was interesting because it wasn't, to me, it wasn't a DM or GM jerk move. It was like, this is what would have happened. in this particular case. I thought about it long and hard as we're sitting there, as they're doing other things. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, is this? Yeah, it's kind of what would happen at this point. So they actually end up going back. There's this tense scene with Rimmer. It's not supposed to be a recap, so I'm not really recapping, but it was a stalemate, and it was like that movie. I don't know if it was Deep Impact. And there's that scene with Morgan Freeman playing the president and with a reporter, and he says, it may seem that we have each other over the same barrel at this point, but it only appears that way. And that's kind of the conversation they had with Rimmer, where Rimmer really kind of has the advantage over them, but they end up actually striking a deal and copying spells. And so the spell that Rimmer wanted, he got to copy out of Reginald's spell book, and Reginald gets to copy a spell out of Rimmer's spell book. But there's going to be consequences for that as well. We just don't know what the consequences are. I know what the consequences might be. The players aren't really sure. But I also got to another kind of lesson learned is this was 18 days of game time they rolled, and that was how long it was going to take for them to copy each other's spells. Reginald wasn't going to let that book out of his sight. So a whole other time, Valiant has to go and do all the other things that they were going to do. And so that got to the point where I just finally had to say, well, time passes. And we were narrating a little bit of what he was doing, and then it was one of those things that it's another thing that I need to kind of chalk up to what am I going to do in situations like this in the future. And there are also some other timelines that I had to. They weren't really set in stone what the timelines were, but I knew certain things were going to be happening outside, and I had to extend those. I didn't even extend those a little bit. I just thought, well, about this much stuff happens at this point. They weren't extended, but they weren't things that the players were actually. I thought the players might actually, intersect with, and they did not because they were stuck in a boat writing spells. And I decided not to go down that rabbit hole of having all these other things happen to the one character. So it was, the session itself was it was still cool. It was definitely a learning session on a bunch of levels. Some interesting things happened in it, and I think talk to the players and hopefully make a few more tweaks and make sure everybody's happy with how things are going. But I think we got we hit a few. I don't want to say we hit a few speed bumps. I don't know if that's the right word, but I found some things out that I didn't anticipate, and chalk it up to experience and figure out how to tweak things and make things a little better. So it was a good time, but there were definitely some interesting parts of the game. I can tell you that.